The sun hung lazily over the quiet Idaho Valley, stretching warm golden fingers across the backyard where 9-year-old Lily Carter played barefoot in the grass. Her carefree laughter floated through the summer air like a bright ribbon, the kind that made neighbors pause and smile. She was kneeling beside her art project, an uneven but determined attempt at a cardboard fairy house, carefully painting tiny blue flowers along the doorway while humming her favorite Disney song. Her mother, Julia Carter, watched through the kitchen window with a soft smile as she stirred a pot on the stove. Days like this were becoming rare, and she savored every second. Lily had always been a sensitive kid, emotionally bright, almost too bright at times, like her little heart felt things more deeply than others. But today she was happy. Today she was safe. Today felt normal. Not 50 feet away, resting in a patch of sun near the maple tree, Max, their 12-year-old German shepherd, lifted his graying head. His ears twitched at Lily's humming and a small huff escaped his nose. He adored that girl more than anything in the world. Though old and slow now, Max had once been a disciplined service dog trained for emergencies, search and rescue, and medical alerts. He had saved lives, real lives, human lives. But in his retirement, he had chosen Lily as his entire mission. Every move she made, every laugh, every shift in her breathing, Max watched, listened, memorized. Even when he napped, he seemed to subconsciously track her, as if every heartbeat in his body was tied to hers. And then it happened. It started so small that no one, not even Max, noticed it at first. Lily paused mid-brushstroke, blinking strangely. She rubbed her forearm as if something stung. Then she coughed, lightly, almost dismissively, before kneeling again. But her humming had stopped. Max's head rose an inch higher. Lily winced, rubbing her chest this time. She took a small breath, then another, each shallower than the last. She dropped the paintbrush. Her fingers trembled. Her lips parted as if to call for her mom, but only a strained wheeze escaped. Max stood. Some instinct, ancient, trained, and sharpened by years of service, flooded through him. His ears went rigid, his pupils widened, his tail stiffened. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Inside the house, Julia sensed nothing. She hummed along to the music playing softly from her phone, lost in her cooking. But outside, Lily swayed on her knees. She pressed a shaky hand against her heartbeat, which felt like it was fluttering wildly inside her chest, as if her body had suddenly forgotten how to function. "Max," she whispered, barely audible. Her vision blurred. The backyard spun. And then, without warning, Lily collapsed onto her side, her tiny limbs folding helplessly, her cheek hitting the grass, her breath trembling like a candle flame about to blow out. Max exploded into motion. His bark shattered the peaceful afternoon, one loud, vicious, panicked roar that made birds erupt from the trees. He sprinted across the yard with a speed Lily hadn't seen from him in years, his joints screaming but his instincts louder. Julia froze at the stove as Max's frantic barks tore through the air. Her heart leaped into her throat. She dropped the spoon, sending sauce flying across the counter, and sprinted toward the back door. "Lily!" By the time she reached her daughter, Lily's eyes had rolled halfway back, her tiny chest rising and falling in weak, irregular gasps. Her lips had begun to pale around the edges, almost bluish. Julia's scream echoed across the property. "No, no, 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 baby, stay with me." She dropped to her knees so hard the impact bruised them instantly. She scooped Lily's head into her lap with shaking hands. Tears poured down her face as she smoothed Lily's hair back, searching for stings, wounds, anything. But there was nothing, no swelling, no rash, no visible injury. Just her daughter fatting. "Please, please breathe, sweetheart," Julia begged, her voice cracking into pieces. Max paced around them in tight, panicked circles, barking at the sky, at the trees, at the world. His fur bristled, his chest heaved, his body trembled with raw fear. Julia whipped out her phone and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. "Please help, "And why, daughter, she's not breathing right," she cried into the phone, her voice nearly unrecognizable through panic. The dispatcher immediately began speaking, calm but urgent. "Ma'am, stay with me. How old is she? Is she responsive?" "And then 9, she's 9. She collapsed, she can't breathe, her chest, oh God, please hurry." "Ambulance is on the way. Stay with her, check her pulse. What's her breathing like?" Julia pressed trembling fingers to Lily's neck. Her pulse fluttered beneath her skin like a fatting echo. "It's faint, oh God, it's so faint." Max whined loudly, pushing his muzzle under Lily's limp hand, trying to lift it, trying to wake her. "Lily, baby, please." The dispatcher's voice tightened. "Ma'am, paramedics are 6 minutes away. Do you understand? 6 minutes." 6 minutes. The words hit Julia like a blow to the chest. Lily didn't have 6 minutes. "What do I do?" Julia screamed into the phone. "She's dying." "We need to know if she's allergic to anything," the dispatcher said. "Did she get stung, bitten, eat something unusual?" Julia's mind spiraled. She was just painting. She didn't. And then her voice broke. I don't know." Max suddenly stopped packing. He froze, ears pricked, body stiff, eyes locked on something invisible, something internal. He remembered this. Not the exact moment, not the exact cause, but the instinct, the emergency, the urgency, the training. Max lowered his head, sniffing Lily's skin deeply. Then he inhaled again, slower, sharper, like he was searching for something hidden. His muscles tightened. His eyes widened. He recognized the scent. Not the exact one, but the same category, venom. During his years of service training, Max had encountered a medical simulation involving bee venom toxicity. A rare but severe reaction, not exactly like an allergy but deadly in a different way. And the smell, the chemical signature, it was faint, but it was there. Something had stung her, something not normal. And Max knew exactly where the antivenom kits were kept. He whipped around suddenly, startling Julia as he dashed toward the yard's back gate. "Max," Julia cried, her voice cracking. "Get back here, Max, come back." But Max didn't stop. He slammed his shoulder into the gate until it rattled open enough for him to squeeze through. Then, without hesitation, he bolted toward the forest at full speed, running in a straight line, not random, not confused, purposeful. Controlled. Driven. Julia's screams followed him into the trees, but Max never looked back. He didn't stop to think about his age or his pain or the forest dangers or the fact that he hadn't run this fast in years. He ran because Lily had minutes left. He ran because her breathing was vanishing. He ran because he had been trained for moments like this, long before he ever met her. He ran because he loved her more than life itself. And he ran because he knew something no human realized yet. She wasn't going to make it. Not unless he found what she needed. Not unless he got back in time. Not unless he survived what waited in the woods. And deep in the forest, unbeknownst to anyone, something dangerous stirred. Max charged forward. And no one knew why he ran. Max tore through the tall grass at a pace that would have exhausted a younger dog, his paws thudding against roots and loose soil. Each step sent shocks of pain through his aging joints, but he ignored it. Lily's life left no room for hesitation. His lungs burned, but adrenaline, focus, and pure determination pushed him forward. Every instinct honed over 12 years of service screamed, "This is critical. You cannot fail." Behind him, the backyard lay in chaos. Julia was cradling Lily, sobbing uncontrollably, the sound of her panicked voice carrying into the forest. She called out repeatedly, tears streaking her face. "Max, come back, Max!" But the dog didn't respond. He couldn't. His mind was consumed by one goal: find the cure, get back, save her. The forest loomed ahead, shadows stretching in the late afternoon sun. Branches scraped Max's flanks and face as he wove through the trees, his paws slipping on damp leaves. He had spent years navigating obstacles, broken terrain, and traps during training missions. Every step was calculated, even under pain. Every sense was alert, the faint chemical odor, the disturbed soil, the subtle shift of air that humans could not detect. And then he noticed it, the faint metallic tang of danger. A hunter's trap, half hidden under a patch of moss, glinted ominously in a beam of sunlight. Max recognized the shape immediately, spring-loaded jaws designed to snap hard and hold tight. He knew the stories from training. One mistake could end his life instantly. But Lily's scent was still strong, her life signal screaming through his nose like a flare in the night. He paused for only a fraction of a second, assessing the trap, calculating the odds. Then, with a growl of determination, he leapt over it. The metal jaws snapped shut inches behind him, missing his hind legs by mere centimeters. Max pressed on, his heart pounding in rhythm with his paws. Each step brought him closer to the faint scent he knew, the ranger's emergency kit stashed near the hiking trail for exactly this type of situation. It wasn't far, but it was guarded by the unexpected. The forest darkened as he ran deeper. A sudden rustle in the underbrush made him freeze mid-stride. A pair of raccoons darted across his path, teeth bared and fur bristling, defending their territory. Max barked a warning, low and commanding, and the animals scattered. Every second mattered. But it wasn't just wild animals that threatened him. As he neared a clearing, the smell hit him, sharp, acidic, alarming. Bees, thousands of them, angry and protective. Their buzzing intensified, a chorus of fury that filled the air. Max hesitated. His instincts screamed danger, but Lily's scent tugged him forward. She was suffering. Time was slipping away. The bees didn't care about his pain or his courage. Max bolted. Branches tore his fur, stingers grazed his nose and ears, and he yelped in sharp, raw pain, but he pressed on. Every cell in his body was focused on the one goal that mattered more than his own survival. And then the sight appeared, a clearing where the ranger's emergency kit was partially hidden behind a moss-covered log. Max skidded to a stop, nearly falling over from exhaustion. He scrambled forward, paws trembling, teeth clamping down on the strap of the kit. He had it, but he didn't have time to catch his breath. A loud metallic snap echoed through the trees. Max's ears shot back. Another trap, more sophisticated this time, had caught his front leg. Pain exploded through his body like fire, and he yelped sharply. He struggled, dragging his paw through dirt and leaves. Blood seeped from the wound, mixing with the grime of the forest floor. The kit slipped slightly, but Max tightened his grip instinctively. He could not drop it, not now, not ever. A voice boomed through the clearing. "Hey, you stupid dog!" A hunter stepped into view, eyes widening as he saw the wounded German shepherd trapped in his device. But even as he approached, the hunter froze. Max's eyes, sharp, intelligent, and focused, locked on him. There was no fear, there was no hesitation, there was only purpose. The hunter took an instinctive step back. And then Max lunged, not aggressively but decisively, dragging the kit free as he tore himself from the trap. The hunter stumbled back, eyes wide in disbelief. Dogs didn't do this. Dogs didn't run through pain, through danger, through life-threatening situations and still accomplish impossible feats. Yet here Max was, bleeding, limping, and unstoppable. The forest path narrowed as he sprinted again, the underbrush closing in. Each step became agony, muscles screaming, lungs burning. The buzzing of bees faded behind him, but the sense of urgency remained. Time was slipping away. He could feel it in the faint trail of Lily's scent. She was fatting. Back in the backyard, Julia's panic had escalated. The paramedics were not yet there. She had scooped Lily into her arms, rocking her gently, whispering desperate pleas. "Please, please, breathe, just breathe." Her voice was raw, cracking under the weight of terror. Her motherly instinct screamed at her that every second counted. Every moment was precious. And Max was gone. He had left her alone with the unthinkable. But Max had a plan. He reached the edge of the clearing, where the path led downhill toward a small trail used by rangers for emergency access. He adjusted his grip on the kit and staggered forward. Each step now caused him to stumble, his old joints threatening to collapse entirely, but he refused. Lily's life depended on this. One paw in front of the other, dragging the weight of both Kit and his pain. Then in the distance he saw it, the faint shimmer of the sun hitting a patch of metal, signaling the edge of the trail, where the ranger had kept his emergency anti-venom supplies. Relief hit Max like a wave, but he did not slow down. There was no time for relief, only urgency. Suddenly a new sound erupted, a snapping twig, a low growl from deeper in the forest. Max froze, predators or perhaps humans. His senses screamed that danger was near. But even as his body wavered between fear and exhaustion, the scent of Lily, stronger now, closer, desperate, drove him forward. He lunged again, dragging the kit over a fallen log. His old muscles screamed in protest. Blood from his paw smeared across the strap of the kit, marking every inch of the journey with sacrifice. Yet he pressed on. He could see the trail now, the way leading back toward the open backyard where Lily waited. Every instinct in his body screamed, "Hurry, hurry, hurry." And behind him, unseen, the hunter and the forest's dangers paused, watching the impossible act unfold. A retired service dog, old and injured, was racing against time in a way no human could truly understand. And no one could predict whether he would make it in time to save the child he loved as fiercely as his own life. Max's eyes flashed forward toward the distant sunlit edge of the forest, the trail he had to cross. The path was filled with roots, rocks, and the remnants of last season's fallen trees, but he could navigate it blindfolded. He had trained for scenarios like this. He had survived life-and-death situations before, yet this was different. This was personal. This was Lily. A sharp snap of another trap rang out behind him, and pain tore through his leg again. His yelp echoed across the trees, bouncing from branch to branch. He stumbled but did not fall. His jaw tightened on the kit. He had minutes left. Lily had minutes left, and he had no time to be afraid. Through the dense forest, Max charged, every muscle burning, every sense screaming for speed, for precision, for life. The forest seemed to blur around him, the trees melting into streaks of green and brown. Each heartbeat was a drumbeat of urgency, each breath a countdown closer to disaster or salvation. And then, through the trees, he saw it, the faint glimmer of light reflecting off the metal kit's latch, signaling the next step in his impossible mission. One step closer to Lily, one step closer to her survival, one step closer to changing the course of a summer afternoon that had begun so peacefully and had suddenly become a race against death. Max lunged forward into the open clearing where the trail began. His paws skidded on loose dirt. His wounds burned, and every movement felt like tearing through fire. Yet he moved with purpose, driven by something deeper than training, something primal, something unexplainable. He was running not just for survival. He was running to save a life, the life of the little girl who had loved him unconditionally and whom he loved more than his own. And just as the edge of the trail opened before him, a sharp rustle in the bushes caused Max to pause mid-step. Something or someone was ahead of him, waiting, watching. And in that instant, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Max's next move would decide everything. Max froze in the small clearing, ears pinned back, nose twitching, eyes scanning. His paws were slick with blood from the trap, muscles trembling, but the scent he'd been following, Lily's faint but urgent life signal, was stronger than ever. Something was wrong, not just the danger around him, something deeper, invisible, insidious. He could feel it in the air, in the subtle shift of the wind through the trees. Then he saw it, a metal box overturned and partially covered by leaves. Max recognized it instantly. Ranger training, emergency supplies, a cache left in this section of the forest for emergencies, and the smell hit him like a slap across the face. Venom. Strong, chemical, unmistakable. Lily had been stung, but not just once, not by a single ordinary insect, something else, something rare, dangerous. He sniffed the air again, nostrils flaring. Yes, the invasive species reported in the news recently. They had arrived in this region, fast-acting venom potent enough to incapacitate a child. Max's instincts told him time was already critical. Max took a tentative step toward the box, but then pain shot up his leg from the old trap. He yelped, nearly collapsing. Blood dripped onto the leaves, leaving a trail behind him. He shook it off and steadied himself. The kit was close. He could reach it. He had to. Lily's breaths were fatting in his mind, each one a countdown. And then movement. From the brush something stirred. It was bigger than a raccoon, closer than a deer. A human figure emerged. Hunter, hiker, danger. Max growled low in his throat, hackles rising. His paws flexed, ready to spring, but the figure didn't approach aggressively. Instead, he froze, watching the dog warily. Max didn't waste a second. He lunged toward the kit, teeth clamping the strap. The figure's eyes widened. Wait, don't. But Max was already dragging the kit free. The human stumbled backward, tripping over roots, startled by the ferocity and intelligence of the old dog. Max's paw caught another root. He yelped. His legs buckled, almost sending the kit flying, but he refused. Lily's life. Every thought, every muscle, every ounce of focus, she was all that mattered. Finally, with one last surge of strength, Max freed the kit and clamped down on the strap. The human, eyes wide with disbelief, shouted something behind him, but Max didn't hear it. His world had narrowed to one goal: get the kit back to Lily. But as he turned to retreat toward the trail, the forest betrayed him. A swarm of the invasive bees erupted from the overturned box. Their buzzing was deafening. They dove toward him, a living, stinging wall of death. Max yelped, dodging and twisting as stingers grazed his ears, snout, and shoulders. One pierced his thick fur near the shoulder blade. Pain tore through him, a shock of fire and venom. His instinct screamed at him to retreat, but Lily's scent was stronger than his own agony. He bolted. The bees followed, buzzing relentlessly. Max skidded past fallen logs, dodged low branches, and clamped the kit tightly in his jaws. Each movement was agony. Blood ran from the old trap wound and the new sting. Every step felt like tearing through fire. Yet he pressed on, faster than his body should have allowed, driven by purpose and love. Meanwhile, back in the backyard, Julia's panic had reached a new level. She had called 911 again, repeating herself in tears. The paramedics were still minutes away. She's fatting, she cried, rocking Lily's limp body. Lily's lips were pale, her small chest barely rising, and every heartbeat was like a dying drum. Julia felt helpless. She had always believed she could protect her daughter, but now, watching Lily's life slipping away, she realized she was powerless, except for one thing. She had to hope. And then Max's distant bark echoed across the trees. Julia's heart leapt. Hope surged, but fear followed immediately. Where was he going? Why had he left? Every second felt like a lifetime. Deep in the forest, Max's journey was reaching its most perilous stage. The trail narrowed, forcing him to weave through rocks and roots. The bees swarmed closer, one striking him directly in the paw. He yelped, but his teeth never released the kit. Another sting grazed his nose, causing him to shake violently, but he pressed on, dragging the precious cargo toward the trail that led back to the open backyard. And then disaster. A fallen log, slick with moss, blocked his path. Max leapt and his paw slipped, sending him tumbling down a small embankment. Pain exploded through his body. His kit tumbled forward, dangling from his jaw as he struggled to catch his balance. He bit down harder. Lily's life was in that box. He would not let it fall. Above him, the hunter stumbled forward, calling out, "Dog, stop! Wait, you're going to get yourself killed." But Max didn't stop. He didn't understand humans' fear. Only his purpose mattered. Finally, he scrambled back to his paws. The edge of the trail stretched ahead, a narrow path toward the open yard and safety. Max's body screamed at him to rest. His paws were bleeding. His shoulder throbbed. His breathing came in ragged gasps. But he couldn't. He refused. Every instinct screamed that the child waiting at the other end needed him alive and well. The buzzing of the bees behind him grew more intense, more aggressive. Max's ears flattened against his head. One sting struck near his eye. Pain seared through him, blinding him momentarily. He shook his head violently and pressed forward. Time was slipping away. Lily's life was measured in minutes, maybe less. And then, just as the forest began to thin, Max caught the scent of Lily again. Stronger this time. He was close. So close. Her scent wrapped around his nose like a lifeline. He bolted, ignoring the pain, ignoring the bees, ignoring the forest obstacles. He could almost see the backyard. The air smelled like grass, sunlight, and the faint trace of panic. But danger had one last surprise. A deep growl reverberated through the remaining trees. Max froze. His hackles shot up. Something massive stepped onto the trail ahead. Shadowed by the late afternoon sun, the figure loomed, a wild animal, predatory and not afraid of a dog. Max assessed: deer, maybe, cougar, possibly, but there was no hesitation. Lily's life was still ticking away. He had to get past. With a surge of courage born from desperation, Max charged. He dodged left, then right, forcing the figure to retreat slightly. Another step and he was past. The trail opened before him, leading downhill toward the edge of the backyard. The forest behind him seemed to explode with buzzing, snapping, and rustling, but he ignored it. His paws hit softer earth as he entered the final stretch. Sunlight filtered through the trees and he could almost see Julia, Lily, the open yard. One more push. One more surge. He was nearly there. But even as relief threatened to wash over him, a spike of panic hit. A sharp pain surged through his paw, the trap's wound reopened, blood flowing anew. He stumbled. The kit slipped slightly in his jaws. His old body could barely carry him. Yet Max's resolve burned brighter than the pain. Lily's faint heartbeat screamed in his mind. He would not fail. He pressed on. And just as he crossed the edge of the forest, the buzzing swirled dangerously around him. He could see the open yard, and a flicker of sunlight danced off something metallic, something familiar. His eyes widened in recognition. The anti-venom kit. But the path to Lily wasn't clear. There was still distance. The countdown had begun. 3 minutes or less separated life from death. Max limped forward, dragging the kit. Each step was agony. Each breath burned. Yet the fire in his chest, the bond to Lily, the unshakable will to protect, drove him forward like nothing else could. The backyard lay just ahead. Julia's voice pierced the air, frantic and fearful. She had no idea Max had the solution. No one did. Only the dog understood. And in that moment, Max's eyes locked on the yard, on Lily, on the seconds slipping away. He had the kit. He had the anti-venom. But could he reach her in time? The clearing opened before Max like a doorway to salvation. The sunlight spilled across the grass, warm and golden, illuminating the edge of the backyard where Lily lay cradled in her mother's arms. But the path was not free. Twisted roots, jagged rocks, and remnants of last year's fallen trees littered the trail. Max's paw throbbed painfully from the trap wound, and every muscle screamed in protest, yet he forced one paw in front of the other. There was no choice. Lily's life depended on this final push. He limped forward, dragging the antivenom kit behind him. Each step was agony. Blood stained the dirt, leaving a trail that marked the courage and sacrifice of every inch he conquered. The buzzing of the invasive bees from earlier had subsided, but the forest seemed to pulse with danger nonetheless. Max's senses were on high alert, scanning for threats, listening for the faintest crack of a branch or rustle of leaves. He was alone, and yet he was not. Every ounce of his being was tethered to the tiny girl waiting just beyond the trees. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the path ahead, a man stepping cautiously from the underbrush. Max froze, hackles raised, muscles tense. The hunter from earlier emerged, eyes wide in shock. "Dog," the man called, holding his hands out. "You're going to get yourself killed." Max growled low, a warning. He did not understand human fear. He only understood urgency. He had no time for hesitation. The hunter's eyes flicked down and noticed the kit dangling from Max's jaws. "Oh my God," he whispered, realization dawning. He understood what the dog carried, the emergency ranger's anti-venom kit. And then he saw the blood, the trap wound, the sheer exhaustion etched into Max's face. "Go, don't stop," Max seemed to bark with his eyes alone, and somehow the man understood. He backed off, muttering, "I can't believe this dog." Max pressed on, limping but determined. Every step tore at his muscles, yet he would not falter. He reached a narrow stretch where a fallen tree blocked his path entirely. The trunk was thick and moss-covered, slick from recent rain. Max sniffed, assessing, calculating. His instincts guided him. He backed up slightly, ran forward, and leapt. Pain shot through his shoulder as he landed, nearly sending the kit tumbling from his jaw. But he held it tight, staggering to his paws, refusing to let gravity, injury, or exhaustion defeat him. Behind him, the hunter watched in disbelief, realizing this dog was not ordinary. Max's eyes, sharp and focused, reflected purpose beyond comprehension. He was older, wounded, yet unstoppable. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Max charged forward. And then, as if the universe itself tested him, another hazard appeared. A hidden gopher hole lay directly in his path. One misstep could send him tumbling, twisting his paw, or worse. Max hesitated only a heartbeat, then leapt, landing precariously on the edge. Pain lanced through his leg again, but he pressed on. Lily's life depended on him. Every throb, every pang, every drop of blood was worth it. Max emerged from the final stretch of the forest and onto the open yard. The sunlight now fully illuminated the scene. Julia cradling Lily, paramedics still minutes away, Lily's breaths faint, eyes half-closed, lips blue around the edges. Time had run nearly out. Max's vision locked on her instantly. He knew exactly where to go. But even as he approached, his body threatening to collapse, another danger emerged. Bees, drawn by the scent of blood, hovered near the antivenom kit in Max's jaws, attracted by the chemicals. They swarmed aggressively, buzzing in a deafening roar. Max yelped in pain, shaking violently, but he would not release the kit. Not now. Not ever. Lily's life was measured in minutes, maybe less. He charged forward, ignoring the stings, ignoring the bleeding, ignoring the aching in his old joints. He crashed through the remaining brush and dropped the kit right at the paramedics' feet. The medics froze. One bent down, recognizing the antivenom kit immediately. "Where did this come from?" she gasped, stunned. Max staggered, collapsing partially onto the grass, his strength nearly spent. His eyes never left Lily. He nudged the kit slightly with his nose as if insisting, "Use this. Use it now." His breaths were shallow, each one a sharp rasp through his snout. Blood from his trap wound and the bee stings dripped onto the grass, a testament to the impossible journey he had just survived. Julia, too stunned to move, stared at Max, then at the kit, then back at her daughter. "Max, you did it," she whispered through tears, her voice trembling. She reached out, but Max's attention never wavered from Lily. His body sagged, but his eyes burned with purpose. He had carried the impossible. The paramedics wasted no time. One grabbed the injector from the kit, checking the expiration date, then immediately prepared to administer the antivenom. The other began oxygen support, stabilizing Lily as best they could. The minutes stretched thin, every second a razor's edge. Max whimpered softly, pain evident, but he refused to move. He lowered himself fully beside Lily, pressing his warm body against her small frame. His head rested near her chest, his eyes half closed but still alert. Every instinct told him to stay, to keep her safe, to share his warmth until she could recover. The paramedic injected the antivenom. Immediately, Lily's body convulsed slightly, her chest rising in uneven, desperate gasps. Her heartbeat spiked, faltered, then rose again, weak but steady. Julia's sobs turned into a scream of relief. She's alive, she cried. Her tears soaked Max's fur, but he didn't flinch. He stayed beside her, his own body trembling from pain and exertion, refusing to leave her side. The hunter, still on the edge of the yard, could only gape at what he had witnessed. He had set traps, wandered the forest, and yet no human intervention, not even his, had made the difference. The dog had done it. Every obstacle, every trap, every predator, every ounce of pain, Max had overcome it. He had defied age, injury, and danger to save a life. And yet, even in victory, the tension was not over. Lily's pulse remained weak. Her breaths, though present, were shallow. Max's own body was failing. His old heart labored, every inhalation painful. Blood continued to trickle from the trap wound. His body was exhausted beyond measure. He could collapse at any moment. Julia reached down, lifting Lily gently, her arms trembling. She looked back at Max. "Stay with me, boy, you hear me? Stay with me." Her voice cracked, filled with both fear and awe. Max nuzzled her hand weakly but stayed put. He had completed his mission. But he was not done yet, not while Lily still needed him. Suddenly, a low whine escaped him, a warning, a plea. Something inside him still stirred. He had carried the kit, navigated every obstacle, confronted danger beyond reason, but his life was still hanging by a thread. The paramedics quickly assessed him, recognizing the extent of his injuries. Bee stings, trap wounds, and exhaustion had combined into a life-threatening state. One of them knelt beside him. "We need to get him to the vet immediately," she said, checking his vital signs. But Max's eyes remained fixed on Lily. His loyalty, his purpose, his love, it all focused on her survival. The tension in the yard was palpable. Julia clutched Lily to her chest, tears streaming, while Max lay beside her, battered but unbroken. The paramedics prepared both Lily and Max for transport, knowing that even though the immediate threat had passed, survival still hung by a delicate thread. Max had risked everything, but the final act, the one that would truly define heroism, was yet to come. And as the sun dipped lower behind the trees, casting long shadows over the yard, everyone waited in breathless silence. Would Max survive long enough for Lily to fully recover? Would his sacrifices be enough to protect the little girl he loved more than life itself? The answer was still uncertain. But one thing was clear. The backyard had witnessed something extraordinary, something heroic, something unforgettable. And no one would ever forget it. The backyard was a scene of chaos and awe. Sunlight spilled over Lily's small form cradled in her mother's arms, and Max lay beside her, battered and trembling. The antivenom injector had been retrieved thanks to Max's heroic effort, but Lily's breaths were still shallow and erratic. Every second counted. The paramedics were now fully aware that this wasn't just an emergency. It was a race against death. "Her heart rate is dropping again," one paramedic shouted, voice tense, as she checked Lily's vitals. "She's in severe toxic shock. We may have 3 minutes, maybe less, before organ failure begins." Julia's entire body shook. Her face pressed against Lily's hair, tears streaming onto her daughter's pale cheeks. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. "No," she screamed, her voice breaking under the weight of terror. Her arms trembled as she held her child tightly, as if sheer willpower could somehow hold her daughter together. Max let out a low whine, lifting his head weakly to nuzzle Lily's face. He could feel her fatting, her life hanging by a fragile thread. His own body screamed in protest, his paw still bleeding from the trap, his shoulder stinging from the bee strike, but he refused to move. He needed to stay with her. Every instinct, every fiber of his being told him, "Don't leave. Not now, not ever." The paramedics quickly sprang into action. One grabbed the injector, checking its expiration and confirming the dosage. The other prepared oxygen, placing the mask gently over Lily's tiny face. Julia's sobs turned into quiet gasps as she whispered, "Stay with me, baby. Please stay with me." Max's eyes never left her. His old legs trembled as he shifted closer to her, pressing his body against her for warmth, for comfort, for life. He could sense the urgency of the moment. Every second was precious, every heartbeat a countdown. Then the first injection went in. Lily's body convulsed violently at the sudden chemical shock, her chest rising sharply and then faltering. Max barked softly, a pained sound, pressing his nose against her face as if encouraging her to fight. Julia held her breath, praying that this miracle, the one Max had made possible, would be enough. Time slowed. The world outside the yard faded. All that existed was Lily, her fatting breaths, the antivenom working its way through her tiny veins, and Max, her loyal guardian, trembling but resolute. And then disaster. Lily's chest stopped rising entirely. Max stiffened, ears pinned, growl rumbling low in his throat. His eyes darted between Julia and her daughter. The paramedics shouted, working frantically, but even their training was pushed to the limits. Max's hackles rose as he sensed the danger, the real danger, the one the humans could not fully comprehend. Julia screamed, rocking her daughter desperately. "No, no, baby, breathe, please breathe." Max whimpered, then did something no human expected. He pressed closer to Lily, nuzzling her face, his own warmth and heartbeat forcing the tiniest spark of life to linger. It was as if he were transferring his own energy to her. His body trembled, his breathing shallow and strained, but he refused to move. The paramedics worked with renewed urgency. One began compressions, pressing gently but firmly on Lily's tiny chest. The other readied a second dose of antivenom, calculating the timing. Every second was agony. Every second was life or death. Max's gaze never wavered. He could sense her fatting. He could feel the thin thread of life fraying. His paws, slick with blood, dug into the grass. His body ached, yet he refused to succumb. He had carried the kit, fought through pain, and now he would stay until Lily's life had a chance to stabilize. Then a glimmer of hope. Lily's tiny fingers twitched. Her chest lifted slightly. A faint gasp escaped her lips. Julia sobbed uncontrollably, pressing her face to her daughter's hair. "Oh my God, you're alive, you're alive." But relief was brief. Lily's pulse spiked and then plummeted again. The toxic shock was aggressive, the venom potent, and time was vanishing fast. Max pressed closer, nudging her gently with his nose, growling softly as if scolding the world for daring to hurt her. The paramedics' eyes met Julia's, conveying urgency and trust. "We need a straight line to the hospital, stat. She's unstable. Every second counts." Julia nodded through tears. "Take her, please, just take her." Max didn't understand fully. He didn't know the hospital meant safety. But he sensed the intent. They were taking Lily somewhere she could survive. His gaze followed her as she was gently lifted onto the stretcher. He tried to move, but the strength was fading from his old legs. He whimpered softly, pressing against the stretcher one last time, refusing to let her go. The paramedics carefully placed Lily in the ambulance. Max's ears twitched at the sounds of sirens approaching. His body ached, blood ran from multiple wounds, but he refused to collapse entirely. He pressed his nose against the side of the ambulance as if to say, "I'm still here. I'll protect her." And then the ambulance doors slammed shut. The world moved away from him. Julia's sobs echoed. Max pressed himself into the grass, exhausted beyond measure, eyes never leaving the receding vehicle. It seemed hopeless. Lily's life was on a knife's edge, Max's body pushed to its limits. Every second that passed felt like eternity. Max's breathing was shallow, labored, every muscle screaming for relief, every heartbeat a battle. He had given everything, yet the final act, the one that would truly determine life or death, was still ahead. Minutes stretched like hours. Max's eyes remained fixed on the ambulance. He felt an instinctive pull. She was moving away, but she was still alive. He had done what he could. He had risked everything. He had delivered the antivenom. Now survival depended on human hands and his faith in them. Julia knelt in the grass, hands trembling, tears streaking her face as she whispered to Max. "You did it. You saved her, you brave, brave boy," Max whined softly, a mixture of exhaustion, pain, and relief washing over him. He had fulfilled his mission, but the consequences of his heroic journey were now catching up. Blood loss, bee stings, and the old trap wound had taken their toll. Max staggered as he tried to stand. His legs threatened to buckle beneath him. Yet he remained alert, eyes tracking every movement of the ambulance, every inch of the retreating scene. He had given everything, and now he would endure the aftermath. The sirens faded into the distance, carrying Lily toward a hospital, toward survival. Max lay in the grass, trembling but alive. His eyes were half closed, chest rising and falling slowly. He had fought through every obstacle, forest hazards, venomous bees, hidden traps, and excruciating injury. And now, finally, he could rest. But even as the adrenaline faded, the worry lingered. Could Lily survive? Would the antivenom work in time? And would Max, battered and bleeding, recover from the ordeal? In the silence that followed, the magnitude of the situation began to sink in for everyone present. Neighbors, the hunter, even the paramedics, who had witnessed countless emergencies, stood frozen, speechless. They had seen heroism, but nothing like this. Nothing that combined bravery, intelligence, love, and sacrifice in such a perfect, heart-wrenching storm. And somewhere deep inside, Max's fading consciousness held onto one truth. He had done everything possible. He had run faster than his age should have allowed, fought through every obstacle, delivered the life-saving tool, and stayed by the side of the little girl who had always been his world. The final chapter was still unwritten. Lily's life depended on the paramedics' skill, the antivenom, and time itself. Max's survival was uncertain. The tension hung thick in the summer air, a fragile thread connecting life, death, and the extraordinary bond between a girl and her dog. Could Lily survive long enough to recover fully? Could Max endure the physical toll of his heroic journey? And would anyone truly understand what had just unfolded in the quiet Idaho backyard? The answer was yet to come. The ambulance roared through the Idaho roads, tires squealing against the asphalt as if racing against fate itself. Inside, paramedics worked frantically to stabilize Lily Carter. Her tiny body trembled violently, pulse weak, chest rising in short, irregular gasps. Her skin had a ghostly pallor, lips tinged blue, eyes half-lidded and unfocused. The antivenom, delivered just minutes ago, was beginning to circulate, but the venom was aggressive, faster than anyone anticipated. Each second dragged, stretching into a lifetime. Come on, work," the lead paramedic muttered, her hands moving with precision over Lily's fragile frame. She had seen emergencies, many life-or-death situations, but this was different. This wasn't just a patient. This was a child, a little girl whose life was hanging by the slimmest thread. Lily twitched slightly. Her tiny fingers flexed, then relaxed. The paramedic exhaled sharply, scanning her vitals. She's holding, but barely. If the antivenom doesn't kick in fully in the next 2 minutes, we'll be looking at organ failure. The urgency pressed down like a physical weight. The other paramedic monitored the IV line, adjusting the antivenom flow, eyes sharp and focused. Every movement was crucial, every second vital. Outside, the siren screamed, announcing a life-or-death struggle unfolding with no witnesses to understand its depth. Meanwhile, back at the Carter backyard, Max lay in the grass, battered, bleeding, and trembling. His old joints protested violently with every shallow breath. Trap wound throbbing, stung paw swollen, shoulder bruised. The toll of his journey was written in every line of his old body. Yet his eyes never left the ambulance. He understood instinctively that Lily's life now depended on human hands, but the weight tormented him. Every second felt like an eternity. He let out a low, pained whine, almost as if apologizing to her for not being able to carry her all the way. Julia knelt beside him, cradling his head gently. "You did everything you could, boy. You saved her, you gave her a chance." Tears streaked her face as she pressed her cheek to his, whispering words of gratitude. Max let out a soft whimper, not from weakness but from relief mingled with pain. He had done the impossible, but now he was left with the aftermath of every bruise, sting, and wound endured in her name. Inside the ambulance, Lily's condition suddenly worsened. Her chest began to shallow further, a faint rattling echo in the confined space. The paramedic's eyes widened. "Her airway, she's deteriorating," one shouted. The antivenom had slowed the venom's progression, but it hadn't reversed the damage entirely. Lily's body was still fighting, but she was close to collapse. Max, miles away in the backyard, whimpered sharply, pressing his nose to the grass. His gaze was fixed on the ambulance as if willing it to move faster, as if he could inject his own courage into the paramedics through sheer force of will. His paws twitched, trembling violently. He was too old, too wounded, but every ounce of his being burned with loyalty and love. The paramedics worked frantically. One began bagging oxygen into Lily's tiny lungs, watching her chest rise and fall with painstaking attention. Her pulse flickered, weak but present. Her tiny body twitched as the antivenom circulated, chemical fire battling chemical fire in a deadly duel. The seconds stretched longer and longer, each one a test of skill, endurance, and luck. In the backyard, Julia whispered to Max, "She's going to make it, I swear. You gave her a chance, you made it possible." Max pressed his head closer to the grass, trembling, weak and exhausted, but he listened. Somehow he understood. Somehow he knew that the struggle wasn't over, not yet, but that every ounce of his effort had mattered. Suddenly, Lily's small hand twitched. The paramedic's eyes widened. "There, she's responding." The tiny pulse in her wrist, fragile and erratic, strengthened ever so slightly. Oxygen mask still on, the paramedics administered a carefully measured dose of fluids to stabilize her circulation. Sweat poured down their faces as they worked tirelessly, fully aware that the margin for error was non-existent. Max let out a low, relieved sigh, though his body was still trembling. His old frame had given everything and then some. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only raw pain and exhaustion. But he had done it. He had ensured the possibility of survival. Lily's faint pulse echoed in his mind, each beat a victory born of courage and sacrifice. Julia, tears streaming uncontrollably, leaned over Max. "You're a hero. My little girl has you to thank for being alive. You saved her life, Max. You saved her life." Max pressed his nose against her hand, eyes reflecting the faint flicker of triumph, though still tinged with pain. Meanwhile, in the ambulance, Lily's condition remained precarious. Her pulse stabilized slightly, breaths more regular though still faint. The paramedics' hands moved quickly and precisely, adjusting the antivenom infusion, checking oxygen levels, and preparing for immediate hospital transfer. Every muscle in their bodies was tense, every movement critical. This was no longer routine. It was survival at the absolute edge. Max, lying in the backyard, lifted his head weakly. He could sense the ambulance moving now, tires screeching over the road as it raced toward the hospital. He watched it disappear in the distance, every beat of his heart tethered to Lily's fragile life. He had done everything he could. He had run through danger, pain, and fatigue, delivering the tool that might save her. Now, all that remained was trust in human skill and time itself. And then, as the ambulance disappeared around a bend, Max closed his eyes, trembling violently, body racked with exhaustion and pain. Every injury, every bee sting, every wound from traps, all of it had pushed him to his limits. Yet beneath the pain there was a flicker of peace. He had accomplished the impossible. He had risked his life, given everything, and made survival possible. Julia stayed beside him, stroking his fur gently. "Rest now, Max. You've earned it. You've given her a chance." Her voice cracked as she whispered into the warm grass, wrapping her arms around him as he trembled. Max's breathing slowed gradually, though unevenly, each inhalation still sharp and pained. But he remained conscious, aware, loyal to the very end. Hours felt like minutes inside the ambulance. Every movement, every adjustment of IV lines, every careful breath from the paramedics mattered. And then, finally, Lily's body began to stabilize. Her chest rose and fell with a fragile regularity. The antivenom was working. Her small heartbeat, weak but steady, pulsed in rhythm. Relief surged through the paramedics like a tidal wave, though the battle was far from over. Back in the backyard, Max let out a low, weary whine, sensing the change. He had been through hell for this moment, and now, in his own battered, exhausted way, he felt a quiet relief. The bond he shared with Lily, forged over years and tested in the most extreme circumstances, had proven unbreakable. Julia whispered through tears, holding his head close. "She's alive, Max. She's alive because of you." Max pressed his nose gently into her hands, trembling still, but aware of his achievement. Every scar, every wound, every drop of blood had mattered. Every painful step had been worth it. And though the fight was not fully over, the paramedics still needed to stabilize Lily completely. The hardest part had been done. Max had delivered hope in the form of a battered, bloodied, heroic act. He had crossed unimaginable odds, risking life and limb to save the most precious life he knew. The backyard was silent now, save for Julia's soft sobs and Max's shallow, painful breaths. The summer sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the grass, marking the end of one chapter and the tentative beginning of another. Lily had survived the worst of it, but could she fully recover? Max had risked everything, but would his battered body survive the ordeal he had endured? And had anyone truly understood the scale of what had just happened in that quiet Idaho yard? The answers were still unknown, but one thing was clear. Heroism had taken shape in the form of a German shepherd who had refused to fail the little girl he loved beyond measure. The story was far from over. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room burned bright, harsh against the soft, pale skin of Lily Carter. Tubes and monitors surrounded her tiny body, pumping oxygen and fluids into her fragile veins. Her pulse was still weak, though steady, and the antivenom slowly coursed through her bloodstream, counteracting the venom that had threatened to steal her life. Every breath was monitored, every heartbeat tracked, every movement a potential pivot between life and death. Julia hovered by her daughter's bedside, her hands pressed together, trembling, praying silently. Tears streaked down her cheeks, mixing with exhaustion and disbelief. The paramedics had delivered Lily in time, but only barely. Her little body was a battlefield, scarred by the invisible enemy of venom, yet alive, thanks to the dog who had risked everything to save her. And Max, the hero of the story, the silent warrior who had run through traps, pain, and exhaustion to bring the antivenom, was nowhere in sight. Hours earlier, after delivering the kit, Max had collapsed in the backyard. The old German shepherd had given everything too much. His wounds, compounded by bee stings, trap injuries, and sheer physical exertion, had pushed him to the edge. Julia had watched him lie in the grass, trembling violently, eyes flicking toward the ambulance as if willing it to move faster. When the paramedics returned to the backyard, they recognized the severity of his condition immediately. "He's in critical condition," one said, voice low and urgent. "Multiple stings, blood loss, severe exhaustion. We need to get him to the vet immediately or he won't make it." Julia's face went pale. "No, he can't leave my daughter. He saved her. He can't." Her voice broke as she struggled to balance fear for her daughter and fear for the dog who had risked everything. In the veterinary ICU, Max lay on a padded table, IV lines running into his frail body. His breathing was shallow, each inhale a sharp, painful effort. His old joints ached, his wounds were raw and bleeding, and his eyes, though still bright and intelligent, were clouded with exhaustion. He had survived the forest, the traps, the venomous bees, and the impossibly dangerous mission to save Lily. But the cost had been nearly fatal. The veterinarian, a tall woman with gentle hands but sharp eyes, assessed him carefully. "He's strong-willed," she murmured. "Older, yes, but incredibly resilient. He's holding on for something, someone. I've never seen a dog fight this hard to survive for another life." Max whined softly, lifting his head toward the door, ears flicking. Julia was waiting outside, packing the hall, tears threatening to overwhelm her again. She had left Lily in the hands of doctors who promised to stabilize her. Now Max, the dog who had made her daughter's survival possible, was fighting for his own life. Time slowed in the ICU. Every heartbeat, every labored breath from Max was a battle. The vet and her assistants moved quickly, administering fluids, pain relief, and antibiotics to counteract the toxins from bee stings and infection risks from trap wounds. Monitors beeped in urgent, jagged rhythms, echoing through the sterile room. And outside, Julia's mind raced. She thought of every step Max had taken, through the forest, past traps, through bees, over roots and rocks. Each step had been an act of courage, an act of love beyond comprehension. And now he was paying the price. She sank to the floor outside the ICU door, sobbing quietly, whispering, "Please just hold on, Max. You gave her life. Please hold on." Hours passed like eternities. The vet stayed by his side, monitoring vitals, checking for complications, adjusting medications. Max's breathing was shallow, his body trembling, but he refused to collapse entirely. Somehow, somewhere deep in his loyal, heroic heart, he held onto the thread connecting him to Lily. And then faintly, a change. His eyes flicked open, dim but alert. He lifted his head slightly, ears twitching at the soft footsteps approaching the room. Julia entered quietly, kneeling beside the table. Her hand trembled as she reached toward him. "Max, you have to fight. You have to," she whispered, tears streaking her face. Max's eyes met hers, and for the first time his lips curled slightly, not in a bark or whine, but in recognition. He knew. He understood. His fight was not over yet. He was still tethered to life by the bond with the little girl he had saved. Meanwhile, in the pediatric ICU, Lily stirred. Her pulse strengthened gradually, color returned faintly to her cheeks, and her chest rose more steadily. Julia held her hand, whispering soft encouragement. "You're alive, baby. You're alive because Max is a hero, because he ran through hell for you." Lily's small eyes fluttered open, weak but conscious, and she murmured, "Max." Julia's heart clenched. She had to explain the impossible, how a dog, old, injured, and exhausted, had run through every obstacle to save her daughter's life. But she knew Lily would understand. She always had. Hours later, Max's condition stabilized slightly. He was still weak, and the risk of infection or complications remained, but the tide had turned. The vet allowed Julia to sit beside him, holding his paw gently. "You gave him strength," the vet said softly. "Dogs like Max, they fight for love, for purpose. That connection is what keeps them alive when everything else fails." Max let out a soft, trembling whine, pressing his head gently into Julia's hand. Exhaustion weighed on him like a heavy blanket, but there was recognition, relief, and pride in his eyes. He had completed the impossible mission. He had saved Lily. And now he was clinging to life, tethered by the same bond he had risked everything to protect. Outside, the hospital hallway remained quiet. Julia whispered to Max, recounting every detail of his heroism, the traps he had navigated, the bees he had fought through, the kit he had delivered. "You are the bravest, smartest, most amazing dog in the world," she said, voice shaking. "You saved her life, and now we just need you to stay with us." Max's breathing steadied slightly. Though his old body was battered, bruised, and raw, his spirit had endured. He had risked everything, and now he was resting, but ready, if needed, to rise again to protect the little girl who was his entire world. And in the pediatric ICU, Lily's condition continued to improve. Her tiny fingers twitched, reaching weakly toward her mother. Julia held her close, whispering stories of her loyal dog, the German shepherd who had fought through every danger to save her. Every gasp, every fluttering heartbeat, was a reminder that Max's heroism had made survival possible. The night stretched on, tense and fragile. Both lives, one human, one canine, had been pushed to the brink. And as Julia watched over them, the bond between the girl and the dog became almost tangible, a lifeline of love, loyalty, and courage that transcended words. Somewhere deep inside Max, despite pain and exhaustion, there was awareness. He had survived the forest, delivered the antivenom, and protected Lily. Now, as he rested, he understood, somehow, that the fight was not over, but victory had been claimed for the moment. The sun would rise soon, and with it, the possibility of full recovery. But the cost had been extreme. Max, battered and wounded, had risked everything for the life of a little girl who adored him beyond measure. And in the quiet of the hospital night, the magnitude of that heroism settled over everyone who witnessed it. Could Max fully recover from the injuries he had endured? Could Lily grow up knowing the depth of sacrifice her best friend had made for her? And would the world ever truly understand the extraordinary courage of a dog who refused to fail the girl he loved? The answers were still uncertain, but the bond, unbreakable, fierce, and heroic, had been forged in fire, and nothing could ever undo it. The first rays of dawn filtered through the hospital windows, painting the pediatric ICU in soft gold. Lily Carter's small chest rose and fell with a steady rhythm, color slowly returning to her cheeks. Her tiny hands twitched, reaching instinctively for her mother. Julia sat at her side, holding her daughter close, whispering reassurances and gratitude. Every fiber of her being was consumed by relief, and by worry for the dog who had risked everything to save the life she held most dear. Max lay in the veterinary ICU, surrounded by monitors and IV lines. His body was battered, bruised, and raw. Every inch of him ached. Yet his eyes, though clouded with exhaustion, remained alert, flicking at every sound in the room. His chest rose slowly but steadily, a testament to his resilience and unyielding will. The vet hovered nearby, quietly monitoring his vitals. "He's remarkable," she murmured to Julia, who had rushed back after ensuring Lily was stable. "This dog has been through more than any living creature should endure, and he's still fighting." Julia knelt beside Max, gently stroking his matted fur. "You did it, Max. You saved her life, our Lily. You're the bravest dog I've ever known." Max's ears twitched. He lifted his head slightly, placing it in Julia's lap. Every movement was a struggle, but his loyalty, his purpose, burned brighter than the pain. He had carried the impossible on his old, worn legs, and now he waited for reassurance, for acknowledgement, for the quiet praise he so deserved. Meanwhile, Lily stirred more fully. Her eyelids fluttered open and she murmured, "Max." Julia smiled through tears, brushing the damp hair from her daughter's face. "Yes, baby Max, he's safe. He's resting, but he's here." Lily's small lips formed a faint smile, eyes wide with recognition and love. Even in her weakened state, she understood Max was her hero, her guardian, the dog who had risked everything for her. In the veterinary ICU, Max's breathing grew steadier, aided by fluids and careful monitoring. His legs twitched weakly, a reminder of how far he had come. The vet adjusted the oxygen, checked the IV lines, and murmured softly, "He has fought to survive for her. That bond is keeping him alive." Julia nodded, understanding fully the unspoken truth. Max's love for Lily was his lifeline, his motivation, his reason to endure the unimaginable. The day progressed slowly. Lily's condition improved steadily. Her pulse strengthened, her oxygen levels normalized, and she even managed a small laugh when Julia told her a story about Max chasing squirrels in the yard. "He's the best," Lily whispered weakly, eyes sparkling despite her exhaustion. Julia smiled, holding her hand tightly. "Yes, baby, he's the best, and he's waiting for you to come home." Back in the veterinary ICU, Max responded to Julia's presence. He lifted his head, ears perking slightly at the sound of her voice. Though his body ached with every movement, he nuzzled her hand, eyes locking with hers in silent communication. It was a bond beyond words, beyond explanation. He had carried Lily's life in his jaws through forests, traps, and swarms of venomous bees. He had faced death to save her. And now he waited, willing himself to endure, to recover, to continue protecting her. The vet monitored Max closely. "He's stable for now," she said, "but he needs rest, fluids, and care. His injuries are severe and the risk of infection is high, but he's a fighter." Julia nodded, determined. "We'll do whatever he needs, whatever it takes. He saved our daughter, he's family." Hours passed. Max rested, breathing shallowly but steadily, his old body gradually responding to care. In the pediatric ICU, Lily's strength returned further. She managed to sit up, small but determined, and her eyes lit up at the sight of her mother and the thought of Max. "I want to see him," she whispered. Julia nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Soon, baby, soon." Finally, the moment arrived. Max, carefully supported by veterinary staff, was brought to Lily's room. The first sight of him made Lily's face light up with joy. "Max," she cried, weak but filled with love. She reached out her trembling hands. Max, recognizing her instantly, lifted his head with effort, eyes brightening, ears perking despite his exhaustion. He struggled to move toward her, legs trembling, body sore, yet his spirit remained unbroken. Julia gently guided Lily closer, allowing the two of them to reunite. Max lowered his head, nudging her carefully, licking her small hands with the gentlest touch. Lily wrapped her tiny arms around his battered neck. "You saved me, Max," she whispered. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I love you." Max leaned into her embrace, closing his eyes briefly, every muscle relaxing slightly for the first time since the ordeal began. The room filled with quiet awe. The vet, Julia, and hospital staff watched as the bond between the girl and her dog transcended pain, fear, and near-death experiences. Max had survived the impossible, endured unimaginable danger, and emerged as the ultimate hero, not just in deed, but in heart. Julia whispered softly to Max, brushing his fur gently. "You did it, Max. You saved her life. And now we can all rest." Max let out a long, shuddering sigh, pressing his head gently against Lily's chest. Every muscle ached, every wound throbbed, but he had done what he came to do. He had carried Lily's life through danger and uncertainty, and survived to be by her side once more. Over the next few days, Lily continued to recover. The antivenom had neutralized the venom, and her body healed under the care of expert doctors. She regained strength, color, and energy, her laughter returning in small, precious bursts. Julia often found her and Max together, side by side, exploring the yard cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. Max moved slowly, carefully, aware of his limitations, but happy to follow Lily's every step, watching over her as he always had. The community soon learned of the extraordinary heroism. News outlets covered the story of the German Shepherd who had defied age, injury, and impossible odds to save a child's life. The story went viral, capturing hearts across the nation. Comments flooded in. "Incredible bravery. A dog like no other. This is what true loyalty looks like." But for Julia and Lily, the accolades mattered less than the quiet, living miracle before them. Max, alive, battered, but triumphant, still ready to protect the little girl who was his world. One evening, as the sun set in a fiery blaze over the backyard, Lily sat beside Max on a soft blanket. Her small hands brushed his fur gently. "Thank you, Max," she whispered, "for everything." Max rested his head in her lap, eyes closing with contentment. His body ached, but his heart was full. He had risked everything, and he had succeeded. Julia watched from nearby, tears in her eyes. She had witnessed the extraordinary, the near impossible, the ultimate act of love and courage. A dog had become a hero, a guardian, and a savior in ways she would never forget. And the bond between Lily and Max, tested by fire, danger, and life itself, was stronger than anything else in the world. As night fell, the backyard was quiet. Max lay close to Lily, breathing steady but labored, every scar and wound a testament to his courage. Lily rested her small head against him, feeling the warmth, the heartbeat, the life of her protector. Outside, the stars glimmered, silent witnesses to a story of heroism that would echo forever. And in that quiet, miraculous moment, one truth became undeniable. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some heroes walk on four legs, with eyes full of love and courage, and hearts willing to risk everything to save the ones they love. Max had done the impossible. He had saved Lily. And in doing so, he had shown the world the true meaning of loyalty, courage, and sacrifice. The night settled over the backyard, calm for the first time in what felt like eternity. The battle was over. Lily was safe. Max had survived. And their extraordinary bond, forged in the crucible of danger and heroism, would never be broken.